right. Hey, Mark Jones.
Hey, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning. So I am Matt Pitts. I'm team leader up at West Cobb, and Brett Caldwell is out of town, and Rick Hill is on an airplane. So you get Matt Pitts and Mark Jones today. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to start right like we always do with the numbers. We'll go through three counties. You can kind of see it here that this is Fulton, and the most updated on Fulton, and active listings right around that 1,000 mark, which is pretty similar to what we've seen over the last 3 months of data shown there. The pending is at 249, pretty consistent with what we've seen the last month and a half. Interesting with the withdrawal and expireds. I think we expected this, but especially expired, if you look at the last 2 weeks in Fulton, almost 300 plus. On top of that, another 253 withdrawn. And then we've got 202 closings that happened in Fulton County. A little bit less than we had for a few months, but pretty consistent across the board. I'm going to switch over to Cobb to look at those numbers. And in Cobb, you can see that the active listings right at that 500 mark, 524, 539, excuse me. The pending is at 155, a little bit less, but pretty consistent. Expired and withdrawns are not as high as we saw in Fulton, but a lot of times Cobb lags a month or so behind the Fulton and in-town markets. And then closed units right at that 128, 161, 128, pretty consistent across the board. And then the last county we'll jump in is DeKalb. And DeKalb had 622 new listings hit the market last week. 65 went under contract. 143 pending, as you can see, pretty consistent, a little bit less. Closed at 109, withdrawn expireds, pretty consistent with what we've seen. So yesterday, the chart masters came out. You guys should see that in Circle, and it will be sent out to your offices as well. But year over year stats came out in the MLS, and the number of available listings year to date this year versus year to date last year are up 62%. We then have contracts and under contract and pending down almost 8%. So between those combinations, you have about an 89% or 1.6 month increase in listings available and active inventory. Increased inventory and lower sales brings more competition. And as a result, price reductions were up 14% year over year as of last year. And that got them up to 45%. And then days on market rose by 72%, which is 13 days. So it's taking 13 days longer. Homes are on the market 13 days, 2 weeks longer than they were last year. The final thought I had on the stats that were given to us and sent out, and you'll get the failed listing percentage was up almost 40% year over year. So 40% more listings than last year were failing. And then now you'll see in Chart Masters that they have a new stat, and that stat is I haven't seen it in a while. Maybe Mark Jones can speak to this. They have a seller concession stat. And what that shows us is the amount of seller concessions as compared this year over last year that are being given. So take a look at that. And what you'll find is seller concessions, and we haven't been in the NAR stuff very long, but are already up over 10% as they were over last year. And that's concessions over $1,000 or more. We're up 10% higher than they were last year. So price point rose still 1.2%. We're still seeing that consistent growth. And seller competition continues to ramp up even more as market pressure ensures condition of the original price are in line with the market. Savvy buyers are getting a little more opportunity here, but more balance. Mark, I talked a lot there in the first 5 minutes. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
These numbers support what I'm seeing with agents, and the sort of anecdotal evidence I've seen. People are just taking a lot longer to make decisions as a buyer. They are going under contract and then holding high expectations for that inspection. And half the time, almost 50% of the time, are just terminating. So I think it's more important than ever to manage expectations of buyers on the front end. And, as a listing agent, you really need to be maintaining expectations with the seller that not only did we have to give some concessions on the front end, you need to be prepared to do what you need to do to keep that property under contract, because with the prices they've been, the interest rates that have been, buyers are feeling very empowered to ask for what they want. And if they don't get it, they're moving on.
Yeah. Really, really great points. And I think we can tell exactly that with the 40+% increase in failed listings. And that's a
Yeah,
expectation pricing conversation, right? So,
absolutely.
okay, love it. So our first article today I'm going to share is one, and we know this, that factors to buy a home really include the money you have, the credit score you have, and employment. And this article talks a little bit about the 142,000 jobs that were added in August, and here's why that matters to us. But more importantly, we're just looking at what is job growth doing, what is going on, are we keeping up to date with that? So it says payroll rose non-farms by 142,000 in the main job categories that are put out. And that is down, revised from the 89,000 we had in July, which we all heard this, we all experienced this, and then we started talking about some rate cuts, right? And then economists expected to see an 8.1 million jobs opening in this report, and there were only 7.7 million. So overall, the article gets into the job market is cooling but not collapsing. Mark, I believe that's exactly what the Fed wanted to do, right?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, collapsing, that drives a recession. We don't want that. We want a soft landing, and that's exactly what they're trying to achieve.
Exactly right. Wage growth has been moderate. Hourly earnings did bump 3.6% in July, which was the lowest since 2021 at 3.8%. Job switchers are happening. They're getting smaller pay bumps, jumping from job to job, the report is saying. And here's the thing, yet while this could be good news for employer retention rate, other trends in the market are challenging business owners. So namely, that's higher interest rates. So our industry is obviously not the only ones impacted by interest rates. And it's a 23-year high as it goes. But all of this to say, this is not yet alarming and an indication of broad layoffs, but it's certainly worth monitoring. And I think we all feel this. And Mark, you can kind of give your input, but there's a lot of uncertainty up in the air sometimes. And a lot of this comes from uncertainty. And I think what this article is trying to say is it's moving in the right direction as to what we want. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be monitoring it and watching it.
Right. It's the downside of a cooling inflation means that the economy is not growing as quickly. And when the economy is not growing as quickly, jobs slow down, right? So
Right.
job growth slows down, and fewer jobs are available. So it's just sort of the natural balance of the radio dial being turned. And it's never exactly where we want it to be on all measures all the time.
That's right. Love that. So I'm going to switch over to another article here. Mark, did that article switch over? Can you see a new
Yes.
one? Okay.
Yep.
So I feel like transparently, I'm more of an optimistic person, and I'm going to give you an optimistic article because Brett's not here and I get the control today. So the the Atlanta housing market should get a boost from lower rates, says Beazer CFO. Mark, I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah.
So
Beazer Homes. So the
yes,
CFO of Beazer Homes is feeling optimistic. And when home builders feel optimistic, that's a good sign for us.
there we go. There we go. So mortgage rates are falling in response to slowing inflation. That's a lot of what we just shared with you in the job report as well, but also with inflation. The David Goldberg, that chief vice president and chief financial officer of Beazer Homes, said he expects demand for homes to rise in the final months of 2024 and going into 2025, clearing the path for home builders to see more activity. So he says, I'm pretty optimistic mortgage rates have moved down dramatically in expectation of what the Fed Reserve has going on. And I'm pretty hopeful that we'll see some pickup in demand over lower rates. We've all been watching them. We all watch them, but rates are at 6.35 on August 29th. Average and falling interest rates are really energizing what he says home builders and buyers alike. And he goes on to say in this article that they're actually have invested, Beazer actually has invested in Atlanta. I think it's over 50% more this year than they have in the past 10 years in land development. So they're expecting big returns in 24 and 25. And I think that's all good news. Mark, would you add anything?
Yeah, no, I think this is really good news. And the more land that gets developed into new housing, the more we close that gap of inventory that we're short right now. So I think that's really good news. And I think he's right about rates. I mean, they're even lower than they were in this article. They're down at 6.27 today. So I think the the good news is the media has started talking about lower rates. So the public is starting to pick up on it. They will really pick up on it once the Fed lowers rates, and it's in every national news story. Even though in the short term, there might be a little bump in retail mortgage rates right after that. In general, it's a good news, and it's going to result in lower mortgage rates. The one thing I think that we need to focus on too with buyers is that right now there's a lot of uncertainty to the point that this article and what you were saying earlier. So now is a time for buyers to take advantage of rates have already come down. There's an uncertainty on the part of sellers. Any seller that's had their property on the market for more than about 10 days right now is stressed. So as a buyer, I'd be taking advantage of that and start making some pretty aggressive offers on properties, because once the election happens, that uncertainty is gone. So between now and November 5th is an ideal time for buyers to buy, because once the Fed lowers rates, more buyers are going to get back in the market. When more buyers get back in the market, competition for every listing goes up. And as competition goes up, prices go up. So right now is the time for buyers to strike, savvy buyers to strike and get the best possible price and under the best possible terms before the market gets flooded with new buyers.
So good, Mark. And what you are giving everyone here is pure messaging and education that they can go out and show their clients what's actually happening and what is going to happen. And the only thing that should change in the market is your message. And you are exactly right. It will be very different today and over the next few months than it will 4 or 5 months from now.
Yep,
And you, as the local economist of choice, have that opportunity to educate. So really good
absolutely.
stuff. All right. So Mark kind of led me right into houses are taking a little longer to sell. I mean, I think a balanced market we know is 6 months. In Atlanta area, we're still well under that. We're still in a very sellers-based market. Yet we're so accustomed the last few years of being whatever that was type of market where it was 1 day, 2 days. And it's actually, I believe, we're in the middle of what is a really good thing. And this article goes in to kind of give an idea of what is happening in days on market. And we went through this at the beginning, but houses sit on the market varies depending on a number of factors, which we've gone over, including location, seasonality. We've studied seasonality over the years, and you can directly link a lot of days on market home sales to seasonality. That doesn't have to determine how many homes you sell, but people who don't say seasonality happens, I would say data says otherwise. Condition and demand. And how, as Mark said earlier, intentional are you being with setting expectation in these? Because we're seeing 31 to 34 days. 34 days is the national average that Redfin's stating. In our Atlanta market, it's 31. and the U.S. home sales completely houses listed were up over 20% year over year, and we went over ours. We were over a 30% mark, so we're ahead of that as well. But
Mhm.
how long homes spend on the market before going under contract is a critical time, because if you set expectation and you have a seller listing agent plan to communicate, can really keep you in the ball game when someone's expecting. Yes, you've set expectation. Yes, you're excited to get their home listed, and yes, homes priced very well are still going under contract in a weekend. But if they don't, uh, anyone here who's taken a listing recently probably has felt that pressure of communicating and understanding what the seller is expecting to what is actually happening in the market. And what this article goes into is a few strategies to really address that concern. But Mark, what are some ways that you feel after I set expectation, after I deliver a listing presentation, after we go live, everything's beautiful and the home just doesn't go under contract in the first weekend?
Mhm.
You've seen as best practice with communicating that with a client.
Yeah, so I want to back up just first because there I think is a step before that, which is looking at how many buyers are in that price point in that area. So, for example, if you're listing a home in a certain neighborhood at $500,000, take a look at the pendings and under contracts. How many have gone under contract and closed in the past 90 days, and how many are pending right now? And what you'll probably see is it's dropped down. So it may have been like three in June, two in July, and two in August, and there's one under contract right now. So what that says is you need to look at that versus how many other homes you're competing with for that same buyer. So if I have $500,000 to spend in that neighborhood, where else am I looking? And look at that as a buyer and go, okay, I need to make sure that mine is priced so that of all the ones I'm looking at in that general price range, it is the best value. So that's number one. And then number two is setting the expectation of how often you'll be communicating with your sellers and finding out how do they like to be communicated with? Is it text? Do they want a conversation? Do they want an email? Do they want data? Or do they just want the bottom line? And part of that is knowing their personality type, but part of it is simply asking. And then just be consistent with it. But I think the important thing is to continue to share that data. Like if there's 10 properties under contract in that price range in that area, and there's only one selling per month, then that tells you like, hey, there's not a lot of buyers right now for this. So if we're not the top one, we are going to have to really drop our price to become the top value of that available inventory.
Really, really good stuff. Um, Mark, I'm going to switch gears on us a little bit and I'll ask
Sure.
you a few questions. So, we went through articles there, and I did this at a team meeting last week. And it's a model, of course. And I think it's timely. So, what I'd like to ask you first is, Mark, what stories are you hearing from agents in the marketplace right now?
Yeah, so the stories I'm hearing have to do with I put a great house on the market at what we thought was the right price and it's sitting.
Okay.
Some are getting shown and no activity, others are not even being shown, right? So that's what I'm hearing on the listing side.
Okay. So what?
On the buyer side, I hear a lot about buyers taking their time, not having urgency about purchasing, and terminating often for reasons that the agent doesn't feel like are valid.
Very good. Very good. So where have you heard examples of scarcity versus abundance when it comes to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is as a listing agent, you have to look at the opportunity in your property still being available, right? One of the other stories that I'm hearing is that more unrepresented buyers are coming to open houses. And I think that's a function of the new NAR rules and the misinformation around it. So people feeling like they don't need a buyer's agent anymore. So it's an opportunity to educate them, but also a whole lot more unrepresented buyers to talk to convert if you are really practicing your dialogues and being skilled on that conversion.
Love
So
it.
that's where I see the opportunity and the abundance. mindset around it. The scarcity is, it's sitting, I don't know what else to do. I'm freaking out. My seller's getting anxious, and just the fear around it, right? And one of the things that I'm grateful for in my career is that I've been doing this long enough where I've seen it take an average of, 70 something days or 90 something days for a home to go under contract. So to me, 30 days on the market is not a lot. But
No.
again, if you set the expectation with your clients and you look at the data with your clients when you're pricing the property, then set the expectation. Even if we price it absolutely perfectly, it may still take 31 days to get under market. If we haven't gotten proper activity by then let's look at getting more people in by reducing the price. But this is the strategy, and we have to just be patient.
Love that. So Mark gave us an abundance versus scarcity kind of mindset that he's seeing out there. So one of the favorite models I have that I love to just show all the time is called the story model. And if you've ever seen the story model, um, what it basically says in everything in our life, whether it's going on a listing appointment or whether it's our kid talked back to us this morning at 7 a.m. Something happens, things happen, life happens. And the story model is the path that we take on anything that comes about our life. And it all starts there at the top where something happens to us. We, from there, have a reaction. From there, we form a judgment. And from that judgment, we make up a story. And then from that story, we go search for other things that other people, other evidence that supports our story. And then all of a sudden, we can predict the future. And then the story starts over.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, and I've found in life, during harder times, I mean, let's be transparent. This has been a tougher time for real estate agents and business owners and entrepreneurs. And you really have to unwind the story because we've learned this before, but things are not inherently good or bad. It's our opinion of what's happening that determines how we receive them. And
Mhm.
you have power over your mind, not outside events. And as we go into fall and winter, I just thought this was timely because if you look at seasonality, what do we have coming up for the most part, Mark, as far as seasonality in the real estate space?
Yeah, I mean, we're right out from the holidays right now. So during that holiday season, the market typically slows down.
It does. It does. And when this opportunity, when this story, when these thoughts start coming into your head of scarcity versus abundance in the market, just realize when something happens, you have a reaction to that something. And when you have a reaction, my implore to you is, hey, let's have awareness on this feeling that I'm happening and let's evaluate it. And the questions I like to do is unwinding the story of what you are actually feeling goes like this. What would you like to have happened in the end? So
Mm.
what would you like to have happened in the end? What could you have done differently to make that occur, right? What
Mhm.
would you need to shift in how you see yourself to make that happen?
Mm.
What would you tell yourself next time? And what would you observe? What would you observe if that were not the case?
I
And
love that.
so I think, a lot of times we're going to give you stats. And what we're doing, Mark, I feel like is just giving people evidence and awareness of what's happening on the market. So a lot of times their clients or even themselves, our agents or me or you, don't tell
Mhm.
ourselves stories, right?
Right.
Um, or at least if we're telling ourselves stories, let's go and find awareness and different opinions of that story from experts and
Right.
maybe create a better story. What are you hearing in this exercise? Is anything?
Yeah, and I love this because particularly the part that says you search for evidence, because we all know there's this thing called confirmation bias, right? And we have a reticular activation system in our brain that's going to look for whatever we think and believe. So if we believe with a scarcity mindset that there's not enough business for us to have a good fall and have a good first quarter next year, then our brain is going to go to work looking for evidence of that. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you catch yourself by asking those questions and reframe the story you're telling yourself around the opportunity that's available. And right now, I got to tell you, I'm hearing so many agents saying inside the company saying that they feel so prepared for this market because of all the training that KW has done with it. And I hear agents outside of our company saying, gosh, our broker hasn't set us up to talk about this stuff. I'm really struggling. So I think anyone in our company is poised to take advantage of the opportunity that this market is affording us. And again, having your mindset around that and seeing it as an opportunity is the first step.
So good, Mark. And I think you're exactly right. We want you to have the reaction that you are prepared and ready to take on this market, while the others are just spinning around predicting scarcity-minded conversations. And you are
Right.
prepared, and you're exactly right. You know, Mark, as we finish up, we went to a presentation at Mega Camp, and it was about an hour presentation, and I'm going to talk about it in 90 seconds. So what I would say is Gary Killer got up and talked at the CEO Summit. First thing he talked about was being tough. And at the beginning of this conversation, you're like, what is tough? Like that's just that's a little elementary, Gary. And he goes into explaining, how do I become tougher in this market? It's tough. What do I need to prepare to get through it and come out and actually thrive? And I feel like it really gave a glimpse quickly, Mark, as to who we are as a company.
Yep.
Because toughness and building toughness is all about one, recovery, but also pushing yourself. And there's a balance in the middle of that that we really live in as a company with you as agents, because yes, we want to be the strongest culture and be there for you, but we also want to push you to be absolutely the best in all areas of your life, a stress test almost. And he talks about this theory of anti-fragile. And it's this concept that anti-fragile is the opposite of being fragile, which is easily broken or tough. Things in life happen to us. And one of the great slides here, because stuff happens. And that's why being tough and being prepared and being ready for situations. Like if you live long enough, this says, if we're all blessed to live long enough, and everyone here on the screen has seen it, with 8 billion people on the planet, a 1 in a million occurrence literally happens 8,000 times every single day.
Mhm.
So what that's saying in short is everybody's going to go through stuff. Everybody's getting through stuff. And the real thing around being tough is when an event or something happens in our life, whether it's an AR, whether it's I lose a listing, whether it's even harder than that, we do have a downwards trajectory of how we feel and what's going on in our life. But at some point, we want to be prepared for those moments. And they're going to, as an entrepreneur, as an agent, you're going to go through those moments more than most if you're actively searching to grow your business and grow yourself, because you're putting yourself in those positions. And being tough, our promise to you is you always come out on top. Being not tough is, unfortunately, you will not, and another event will happen, and another event will happen, and another event will happen. And it'll be the same story, the same unwinding, the same issues that we've walked into. So I just want to share with this, each of your team leaders has this presentation and are delivering it at meetings. And I implore you to go to the full meeting, but just wanted to share a quick little glimpse here at the end.
I love that. It real quick, it just reminds me of my brother plays guitar, and when he first started playing guitar, he got these really terrible calluses on his fingers, and it hurt. So he wanted to stop, but he didn't. He kept going, and now because he's done it so often, he has calluses on his fingers, and he can play through anything.
Mhm.
And calluses are the result of hard work, and it makes you anti-fragile, right? So like think of it as mental calluses, building neural pathways and choosing harder pathways than easier pathways helps your brain wrap itself around, okay, I'm going to do what's not easy. I'm going to do what everyone else is saying they won't do right now, which is double down and talk to more people. It's going to be diving in deeper with my sphere. So I love that model, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. All right, Mark, great job. I appreciate you, my friend. And you guys have a great rest of your Monday. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.